Want to hear something insane? My clients over 40 are gaining muscle fast, doing just 2 workouts a week and 2 sets per exercise. This is also the exact method that took my body from this to this. Most guys think they need to work out 5 to 6 days a week, but that's exactly why they stay stuck. The truth is, after 40, less is more. So in this video, I'll show you the full 2 workout, 2 set routine, including the exact exercises, sets, reps, and progression so you can build muscle fast without spending more than 2 hours a week in the gym. Now, it all starts with 2 full body workouts a week. So you're gonna have a workout A, and then you're gonna have a workout B. Now, why 2 full body workouts a week? Well, there are actually 4 reasons why this workout split is so effective for men over 40. The first and most important reason is recovery. So most guys over 40 think that more is better. They think they need to train more to gain more. More days in the gym, more sets, more exercises, more reps, but that could not be further from the truth. And honestly, I used to believe the same thing. When I first got into weight training about 8 years ago at this point, I too fell victim to this mindset that more is better, right? So what did I do? I trained 5 to 6 days a week on what felt like marathon workouts. And luckily I only did this for about 6 to 12 months before I actually realized the truth, so I didn't waste too much time on bullshit. But after about 6 to 12 months, I started to realize that, yes, I saw some results because obviously when you're first getting into weight training, you're so new to the stimulus of it that you're bound to gain some muscle. But what I felt was that for the amount of time I was investing into the gym, my results were kind of mediocre. So after about 12 months, I reached this point where I reduced how much training I was doing. So I went from doing about 5 to 6 workouts a week down to just 2 to 3. And at this point, I didn't expect anything crazy. I didn't think I was gonna get better results doing that. But I did that, and it turned out that I did see much better results doing that. And that's when I had this big epiphany, which was that all along, I had been constantly breaking my body down without giving it a chance to actually rebuild bigger and stronger. Right? And this is the same trap that I see so many men over 40 fall into. Because think about it, if that happened to me as a young kid, what do you think it means for you as a man over 40 who has an even more decreased recovery ability? If I couldn't handle that, then you sure as hell can't either. So what you have to understand is that after 40, your recovery ability slows down, and it is for that reason that less is more. And this is not a bad thing, it just means that you have to act accordingly. And this is why I strongly recommend the 2 full body workouts a week, because it is very in line with the recovery ability of a man over 40. So you'll actually see much better results doing this because you'll be training according to your recovery ability. So most guys simply train too often and just don't recover enough, and that's why they don't gain muscle. They're constantly breaking themselves down without giving their bodies time to actually rebuild bigger and stronger. Because here's the big takeaway here. Muscle is not built in the gym. It's built outside of the gym during rest and recovery. So if you're not giving your body enough time to rebuild bigger and stronger between workouts, you're just gonna stay stuck. Right? Simply put, if you do not recover enough, you will not grow. Now, the second reason is intensity. And unfortunately, due to my unprofessionalism, I completely forgot to write the first one down. But intensity is the second reason why you want to train just twice a week. So when you train too often, you go into your workouts unrecovered. And what that does is that it leads to decreased effort in your workouts. So essentially, most men are training at about 50% of their true capacity because they go into their workouts tired and fatigued. And you might not even realize this, right? Because you might have been training 5 to 6 days a week for years. So you probably don't even know that there's this next level of effort and intensity that you can actually bring into your workouts. So most men are not pushing nearly hard enough because they're going into their workouts tired and fatigued. And when you're tired and fatigued, you cannot push as hard as you really could if you went into that workout recovered, right? And so this is not only referring to muscle recovery, right? Everybody thinks that obviously I need my muscles to recover before I go into the gym. But there's actually something even more important than muscle recovery, which is CNS recovery, your central nervous system recovery. So your central nervous system is essentially the thing that is responsible for allowing you to exert force. Essentially, it's the thing that allows you to recruit your muscles to actually push hard, right? And your CNS takes about 48 to 72 hours to fully recover from a hard training session. So you need both your muscles to be recovered and your central nervous system to be recovered in order to train with maximum effort in your workouts. And why is it important to train with maximum effort in your workouts? Well, because training hard is what drives muscle growth. Fundamentally, Muscle growth is all about just stimulating growth through training hard and then getting out of the gym, resting, recovering, coming back a little bit bigger and stronger. Like that's how muscle building works. And the first step in that chain is to actually stimulate the growth, which you do through pushing your sets hard and close to failure, right? And so everything sort of starts here in a sense. So if you're not going into your workouts fully fresh, fully recovered, you're never going to be able to actually train hard enough to stimulate maximum muscle growth. By the way, guys, just to pause the video for a second, if you want my personal help implementing all of this in your life so you can pack on muscle and strength and finally feel proud of what you see in the mirror, click the link in my description below and book a free call with me. On that call, we'll break down where you are now, what's keeping you stuck right now, and map out a clear plan to get you where you want to be. There's no pressure at all. It's just a real conversation to see if I can help you. And whether you join or not, you'll walk away with clarity and a path forward. Now, the third reason is progressive overload. So not only does going into your workouts unrecovered lead to insufficient effort in your workouts, it also leads to poor progress. This is why so many men over 40 are stuck and quite frankly weak, because they're always going into their workouts unrecovered because they train too often. And what that does is it prevents them from being able to strive for strength gains and push into new ground, right? You have to understand that gaining muscle requires a constant striving for strength gains, because fundamentally, in order for you to gain muscle, you need to continue adding weight and reps over time. Because if you do not do that, you will not be giving your body a reason to grow, right? So like there's a certain amount of weight that you're using right now across the exercises that you're doing in the gym. And if you just continue using them, there will come a point where that weight is going to yield an insufficient muscle building stimulus because your body will have adapted to it, right? It will have built the muscle required in order to move that weight. And so it's no longer going to be challenging enough to place sufficient stress on the muscle. And so in order to continue gaining muscle, you need to continue adding weight or reps over time. And to do this, you need to go into your workouts fresh. Like I cannot tell you how many guys over 40 I see at the gym that I work out at that are just lifting the same weights every single week and looking the same every single week. And it's because they're not achieving progressive overload. They're not adding weight to the bar over time. And the reason why they're not able to add weight to the bar over time is because they're in the gym every day. It's like, how can you expect to strive into new poundage territory and add weight over time if you're exhausted going into your workouts? Like it's ridiculous. And not only like do I see this with the guys at my public gym, but I also see this with my clients all the time. You know, oftentimes my clients will come to me and a lot of them are in a position to where like they feel like they've sort of tried everything and that they're looking for this like new method to try and achieve results, right? And to gain muscle and strength. And usually they come to me after having followed like conventional bodybuilding programs where they're in the gym 5 to 6 days a week and they're completely stagnant. Like they haven't gained like an ounce of muscle or strength because they're always in a state of overtraining, right? They're not getting stronger. And so what happens is that as soon as we reduce their frequency, we have them train less often and jump on this full body twice a week routine, they start getting stronger every single week. I get messages all the time from my clients like, Rio, holy shit, I'm gaining strength every single week. Like when is this gonna come to an end? I'm like, this is fantastic. It's because you're allowing yourself enough recovery time between sessions so that when you go into your workouts, you're fresh, recovered, and you have the ability to push into new ground. Now, let me just take a step back and say this, because I know a lot of you guys are probably watching this right now thinking like, okay, this obviously sounds fantastic, but you're probably having a hard time believing this because this is so unconventional in the modern day fitness industry. And a lot of you guys are probably just thinking like, okay, this is obviously just some young guy chatting shit on the internet. And you know what? Fair enough, man. There's a lot of bullshitters on the internet, so I'm not even gonna blame you for that. You should be skeptical because most people are out there with bad intentions. But let me tell you this, right? This might give you some peace of mind. So this is actually something that I discovered early on when I landed upon this training philosophy because I did not invent this, right? So the steroid era started in the 60s, right? This is when physiques that you saw were pretty much all enhanced. This is when guys started relying on steroids to build their physiques. That started in the 60s. And what do steroids do? They give you superhuman recovery abilities. And funny enough, coincidentally, this is when 6-day training routines were born. Bodybuilders basically realized that they could handle more volume and they could train more often because of steroids. However, if we look before the 60s, before steroid use became incredibly prominent in the fitness industry, men trained just 2 to 3 times per week to build their physiques. Think of guys like Reg Park, Steve Reeves, guys with legendary physiques who built their physique. I don't want to say naturally because I don't know, they were probably taking something, but it was obviously a lot less drug use than what you see nowadays with all these like Ninja Turtle like physiques, you know what I mean? And the reason why they trained 2 to 3 times a week is because they were natural. They were barely enhanced, right? So they couldn't recover from as much training volume and as much frequency. That's what these guys understood, is that when you're drug-free, you cannot recover from as much training volume and you cannot recover as fast between workouts. So they train 2 to 3 times a week on full body routines. So that hopefully that gives you some peace of mind, because this is actually the rediscovered way that men built their physiques back in the day, before steroids became very prominent in the fitness industry. They just trained a couple times a week on full body routines and really emphasized recovery. Now, the fourth reason is sustainability. You guys would never believe, like, the amount of clients that come to me saying like, Rio, I could never stay consistent with weight training until I found you and I found your polarity method. And there's actually like a certain story that's coming to mind right now, which is my dad's story, right? So my dad's 53 years old. He started weight training just about 2 years ago at this point, following this exact method, and he achieved a pretty incredible body transformation. And I did this interview with my dad that maybe I can link here if you want to watch after, where my dad basically credited his success to the flexibility of this system, right? Because my dad's a busy dude, you know, he's got a lot of shit going on. He obviously has a family, he's got his work, he's got all different things going on, right? And other things. You know, he's not the type of guy basically who just loves being in the gym, you know what I mean? He's like, I want to get the result, but like I don't want to live in the gym, you know, and those are the type of guys that I help. And my dad basically credited the flexibility of this system to his success, because the beautiful thing about this method is that due to the flexibility, it's so sustainable. Because, you know, let's say you miss a workout on Monday. It's no big deal. You push it to Tuesday, you push it to Wednesday. Why? Because you only have 2 workouts each week. So it's very flexible. You can move these workouts around based upon your schedule. That makes for a very flexible system, because how many guys commit to like 6-day workout routines and then they miss workouts and then they feel guilty and that guilt builds up over time and then they just throw in the towel and they can't stay consistent, right? So if you're over 40, chances are you probably have a family, you probably have a career, you might not even like working out. Like you might have just other things that you prefer doing. Like you likely have tons of responsibilities and limited time, right? And that makes getting your workouts in more difficult, especially if you're trying to commit to 6-day workout routines, right? And that's probably what you've experienced if you're watching this video right now. You've probably tried many systems that didn't really fit into your life, right? And you couldn't stay consistent with them as a result. This method solves that, because no matter how busy you are, you can sustain 2 workouts a week. If you can carve out 2 hours a week, you can follow this method, right? And at the end of the day, guys, consistency beats intensity any day of the week. I don't give a shit if you can stick to a 6-day training plan for 2 weeks. I don't care, it doesn't matter. The only way you'll get results is from the long-term compounding and consistency of doing something. So I would much rather you commit to 2 workouts a week, because you know that that's something that you're gonna be able to stick to, than to try and like bite off more than you can chew and stick to a 5-6-day workout routine for like a couple weeks and then throw in the towel. The sustainability, the flexibility, the consistency that this system leads to is just, it's a no-brainer. Like it honestly blows my mind how more people are not teaching this stuff. Like, I mean, it's good for me, but like, come on, like it's common sense, man. It's common sense. Like this is the way to train, unless you're like a bodybuilder and you want to like live in the gym, you know, like this is the most practical, simplest, most sustainable, most effective way to train as a man over 40. So now that you understand the reasoning behind why full body twice a week works so well for men over 40, let's actually dive into the routine. So I've drawn out a little bit of a example of what the sort of structure or skeleton rather looks like with this sort of workout split. We'll get into the exercises that you're going to do in just a moment, but this is how the actual structure looks. And so there are different ways to do this. You know, some people might prefer doing more exercises with fewer sets or more sets with fewer exercises. I just wrote out sort of my preference here, which is what I've seen work best for myself and also for my clients. And that preference is to do 3 compound exercises per workout and then 2 to 3 isolation exercises. So obviously in any workout program that is effective, you should have a balance between compound exercises and isolation exercises. And for those of you who don't know, compound exercises are basically just movements that work multiple joints and muscle groups, right? Whereas isolation exercises, on the other hand, are exercises that work a single joint and muscle group. So you'll notice that we start with the compounds and then we finish with the isolations. And that's because compound exercises are quite frankly much more effective for building muscle and strength. And they're also the more strenuous movements of the two. So that's why you want to start with them while you're fresh. So now let's talk about how to actually pick the exercises that you're going to do in that skeleton, that workout split that I just showed you, right? So basically, I use a framework called the Core 6. This is the exercise selection framework that I use for myself and that I use for my clients. And it's such a powerful framework because it kind of just cuts through the bullshit and makes things really simple. It sort of demystifies exercise selection, right? And the reason why it's called the Core 6 is because there are 6 core movement patterns that exist for human beings, right? We have squats, we have hip hinges, we have horizontal pushes, horizontal pulls, vertical pushes, and vertical pulls, right? So basically, you want to have in your workout routine a big compound exercise for each of these movement patterns, right? And if you have one good one for each of these that works really well for you, you're going to be in a very good place exercise selection wise. You're going to make sure that your routine covers all your bases, that you're focusing on the most powerful movements for building muscle and strength. So on this pad here, I've sort of drawn out examples of Core 6 movements, right? And the reason why I'm showing you examples instead of saying like, hey, these are the 6 best exercises to do is because really exercises are just tools in your toolbox as a lifter, right? There's so many videos on YouTube, like I don't watch them, but I see them pop up in my feed here and there. People are like, the only 6 exercises you need to do, like these are the best ones. And it's like, that's not really true, man, because like there's so many exercises that work, like they all work essentially, you know? And the reason why I like to look at it as like tools in the toolbox is because you know, you're not going to go into your toolbox and say like, oh, this tool is more effective than that one. It's like, no, that's not true. It's context dependent. It depends on what you need the tool for, right? So that's how I think about exercise selection. So I've given you some examples here. So for squats, you could do a leg press, you could do a barbell squat, or you could do a belt squat. For a hip hinge, which is basically a deadlift of some kind, you can do a conventional deadlift, you can do a Romanian deadlift, or you could do a stiff-legged deadlift, right? For a horizontal push, you could do a flat bench press, you could do an incline bench press, you could do a dumbbell press, or you could do dips. For a horizontal pull, you could do dumbbell rows, barbell rows, machine rows. The options are endless there, really. For vertical pushes, you're going to do either a barbell overhead press or a dumbbell overhead press or a machine overhead press. And then finally, for vertical pulls, you can do a chin up or a pull up or a lat pull down. So what you want to do is you want to find out like what's the best exercise that works really well for me that I enjoy for each of these movement patterns, right? And then once you have picked your Core 6, then we're going to go back to the actual workout split and we're going to split them up. So here's an example of a workout routine that I just put together based on a random selection of Core 6 exercises that I picked, right? So you can see here we have our workout A and we have our workout B, or 2 workouts, right? And so basically the way that I like to do it is that on one workout, I like to do the hip hinge, which in this case, I picked the Romanian deadlift, a horizontal push, which I picked the flat bench press for, and then a horizontal pull, in this case, the barbell row. And then I like to do the squat movement, which for here I picked barbell squats, and then the vertical pull, weighted chin-ups, and then the vertical push, dumbbell overhead press, right? So you can see like once you picked your Core 6, you basically just split them up in that way. And then these are the foundation of your workout routine right here. These are the most important movements that you're gonna be doing. Like if you get stronger at these Core 6 movements that you're doing at the beginning of your routine, your physique will improve, right? It's just a law as true as gravity. Like it has to happen, right? So that's the Core 6, that's the foundation. And as you can see here, we also have some, I can't open this marker, so much for all the workouts. So we have our isolation exercises here, right? And so I didn't talk about how to actually pick the isolation exercises, but it's really, really simple. So the way you pick them is just based upon your weak points. So the goal of compound lifts is basically like those are your bread and butter. Those are like the meat and potatoes of your workout routine. Those are going to drive the most muscle and strength. And then you have the isolation exercises at the end, which are the single joint movements. And the whole purpose of isolation movements is to plug the gaps that are left by these Core 6, right? So you want to look at your physique and you want to be like, okay, like what's lagging behind? What do I feel like is not being hit that hard through the Core 6? And then you want to allocate some isolation work to that. So in this case, on the workout A, I picked bicep curls for the biceps, lateral raises for the side shoulders, and then some calf raises. Very simple. And then on the other one, I did tricep extensions, some ab work, and then some neck curls, right? So it's very simple. And you can see now, you basically created a very well-rounded, full body, twice a week setup. So now that we have the workout structure set up and you know what exercises you're going to do within those workouts, we need to talk about the actual sets per exercise, right? And this comes to the second part of this whole method, which is the 2-set aspect, right? So this is 2 workouts, 2 sets. So that's basically what I'm going to recommend, is that for all of these movements, you're going to do just 2 sets, 2 working sets, all right? And so why fewer sets? Why just do 2 sets when most people in the fitness industry will tell you that you need to do like 4, maybe 5 sets per exercise in order to gain muscle? Well, see, back to the story that I told you earlier on in this video. When I first got into weight training, I was training 5 to 6 days a week. I realized that that didn't really work too well for me. And there was also another discovery that I had made in that process of shifting to doing less. And that was the actual quantity of work within the workouts, right? So not only was I training 5 to 6 days a week, but the workouts themselves were very long. I was doing multiple sets per exercise, usually like 4 to 5 sets per exercise. And one thing that I realized is that once I dropped the number of sets I was doing, I was able to put a lot more effort into the sets. And that yielded me better muscle growth because remember, muscle growth is driven by training hard. And fundamentally, in order to train hard, you have to do less. And so there's a saying by a guy named Arthur Jones, who was the mentor of Mike Mentzer, who you might be familiar with. And he had a saying where he said, you can either train long or you can train hard, but you can't do both. And so basically what he meant by that is that there is a fundamental trade-off that exists in weight training between volume and intensity, right? And so essentially, you want to do less, you want to do fewer sets so that you can push yourself harder. And the best example to sort of illustrate this point is to imagine that you're doing, let's picture you're going into squats, for example, right? And on one workout, you're gonna try doing 2 sets, and then on the other one, you're gonna experiment with doing 5 sets, right? Just imagine that. And you can even put this to practice yourself, right, in one of your workouts. I want you to experiment with this because it'll actually really drill the point home for you. If you go into your workout and let's say you have to do the 5 sets, you might not even realize this, but subconsciously you're going to be holding yourself back in those sets because you know deep down like, oh shit, I got 5 sets to get through. I better hold myself back. I better conserve energy, conserve intensity in order to get through all of it. So what basically happens is that you end up, what am I doing? I'm drawing a fucking dollar sign. You end up with half-assed sets, basically. I can't even fucking spell. But yeah, you end up with half-assed sets, basically, right? Because you're doing so much, you have to dilute your effort in order to get through it all. But if you do just 2 sets, you're gonna approach those 2 sets with a completely different mindset. It's not gonna be a mindset of, okay, let's hold back in order to get through all this. You're gonna go into it with the mindset, oh, let's try and make these 2 sets count. Right? And that is a much more productive mindset to go into training with. Because remember, training hard is what stimulates growth. So a lot of guys just do endless sets for the sake of doing endless sets, but they're actually just half-assing their effort. And so the sets that they're doing lack quality. But if you do fewer sets, you push them harder, you stimulate more growth. So that's why you want to do just 2 sets per exercise. Now, as far as how to actually conduct these sets, let's talk about a few different things. Let's talk about the rep scheme first. Now, when it comes to the amount of reps that you're going to do per set, literally anything between 5 and 20 will stimulate growth. Anything between 5 and 20 reps is fine, right? A lot of people think like there's like a magic amount of reps that you're supposed to do per set. But that's not really true, man. Like this is really like the muscle growth rep range. It's between 5 and 20, right? So anything there works. I'm gonna go ahead and recommend that for most exercises, you do 6 to 12. So 6 to 12 reps is, in my opinion, the sweet spot for most exercises, right? Especially the compound exercises. You know, for some isolation exercises, you're gonna be doing things like 12 to 20 reps because you're not gonna do like a 6 rep set of like lateral raises or calf raises, you know what I mean? So that's what I'd recommend. And then as far as how to actually conduct these sets, I have a training method that I've sort of coined. I probably didn't invent it, but I haven't seen anyone else teach it in the fitness space. So I call it the polarity training method. So the way that the polarity training method works is that obviously you're gonna be doing 2 sets per exercise, right? But the way that I really love to conduct sets is to start with the heaviest set first and then to finish with a lighter back down set where you go for a couple more reps. So here's an example, right? If you're doing 2 sets, you could do the first working set for 6 to 8 reps. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna rest and then you're gonna drop 10% of the weight. And then you're gonna go for 8 to 10 reps on the second set. So it's like a top set followed by a back down set. And it works really well because I find when you're just using the same weight across every single set, you tend to like hold back a little bit, right? Because you're like, oh, I've got to do this weight again. But if you do your first set with a heavier weight, you can really just unleash maximum intensity and focus into that set without having to worry about the fact that you're gonna have to do it again, right? So this creates a very good psychological effect as well, to where you only know, like you know, you only have to do this really heavy set once, and then you can go a little bit lighter. So it works really well. And oftentimes, like if you're pushing the sets hard, which you need to, which means pushing them close to failure, you're not going to be able to replicate your performance on the second set. So it makes sense to take some weight off to sort of accommodate that performance drop off, right? So it's really important that when you're doing these sets, you need to push them to like 0 reps in reserve, which means squeezing out every single rep that you can do using good form. Because otherwise, it sort of defeats the purpose of doing the 2 sets. Because remember, we want to do the fewer sets in order to push them harder. So you need to make these sets count. That's the only way you're going to be able to get away with doing just 2 sets per exercise. You need to push them close to failure. So that's really important. Make sure that you're pushing them to 0 reps in reserve. Now, as far as rest time, because obviously you're gonna need to rest between these sets, I'm gonna go ahead and strongly recommend that for compound exercises, you rest 3 to 5 minutes. Now, this is gonna depend on what exercise you're doing. So if I'm doing like a bench press, for example, I might just be able to rest 3 minutes between sets. If I'm doing like a squat or a deadlift, it might be closer to 5 minutes. Anything less than 3 minutes on compound exercises is just insufficient for muscle growth. The whole idea is that with the rest period, you wanna rest long enough to get to the point where you can replicate the performance that you had on the previous set as much as possible, right? You don't want to go into a set still tired from the previous set, because then you're not going to be able to push yourself that hard. So you want to rest long between sets in order to recuperate, so that you can push yourself hard in the follow-up set, right? And then as far as isolation exercises, you only really need about 1 to 2 minutes. And that's because isolation exercises are just a lot less demanding and you can recover from them pretty quickly. With compound exercises, like these movements work so many muscles at a time and they're very strenuous on your system. Isolation exercises, like you can recover from them within a minute or 2. So that's all you really need as far as rest time. And then you're probably wondering like, oh, are you just going straight into these 2 sets or are you warming up? Yes, you want to warm up. So the way that I like to do warm-ups is I like to basically do the minimum amount that you need in order to get into your working sets, right? So basically, you got to find that out for yourself. For some people, that's going to be like maybe 2 to 3 sets. For some people, it might just be 1 warm-up set, right? So the way that you'd want to do it, let's say you're doing like 2 to 3 warm-up sets. The way that I prefer to do it is on the first warm-up set, you're going to do 50% of your first working set. And you're gonna do that for 6 reps. And then on the second warm-up set, you're gonna do 70% of your first working set for 3 reps. This is my favorite way to do it. Again, this comes down to personal preference, but then like after I finish these 2 warm-up sets where I'm slowly ramping up to the first heavy set, then I get into my first working set, right? So the idea is to just do the minimum amount you need in order to get into your first working set. And I like to basically just ramp up to that first set. I don't need to do like general warm-ups. It's not really necessary. I just prefer to like get some blood flowing and get myself prepared to actually lift some heavy weight on the working sets. So now you pretty much have everything dialed in, right? You have the workout split, the structure, and then you know what exercises you're doing, and you know how many sets you're going to do for each of those exercises, and you know how to conduct those sets at this point, right? So the next thing is progression, because as I said at the beginning of the video, like progressive overload is the most important thing when it comes to muscle growth. You can't just lift the same weights week after week and expect anything to change. You need to have a system in place that allows you to gain consistent strength over time and add weight to the bar. And so when it comes to your progression method, I'm going to recommend that you follow what's called the double progression method. So to bring the example from earlier, let's say that like with your 2 sets that you're going to be doing per exercise, you're going to be doing 6 to 8 reps on the first one, and then 8 to 10 on the second. So as you can see here, you have a rep range that you're working in, right? And this is how you basically conduct the double progression method. So you're going to be using a certain amount of weight for each of these sets. So let's say you're going into your first workout after watching this video, and you're going to be doing squats, and you're going to be doing 225 pounds for 6 reps, right, on that first workout. Well, on the next workout, you're going to try to get 7. So you added a rep, right? And then on the third workout, you're going to try to get 8. And then once you've hit 8, you've hit the top of the rep range, right? Because as you can see here, the rep range is 6 to 8. So basically, the double progression method is just a way to basically progress with reps and then weight. So you're going up slowly with reps, and then once you hit the top end of the rep range, you then add 5 pounds. So then let's say you go into your next workout, which would be the 4th workout after you hit the 8th rep, right? Then now you'd go up to 230 pounds, right? So you'd add 5 pounds, and then you drop down to the bottom of the rep range. So you'd go to 6. So that's basically how it works. And then from here, you're literally just gonna build up again. You're gonna go up to 7, and then like so on and so forth, right? So like that's why it's called the double progression method. You're either progressing in reps or you're progressing with weight. And this is super effective. This is all most of you guys are going to need for gaining strength. It's a very simple but very effective progression system to follow. And it's also important to note, like, obviously I gave this example of like 6 to 8, 8 to 10. Again, you can build muscle within the 5 to 20 rep range. So like on some exercises, you're going to be doing like 12 to 15 or 8 to 12 or, 5 to 8. Like it doesn't really matter, but like ideally you just get the principles from this. So you understand how you can conduct this system yourself. If you enjoyed this video, then you're gonna love this video right here where I actually take you through one of these full body workouts so that you can see how this looks like in the gym.